I'm Will Gompers, I'm the BBC's arts editor and just chairing some of the sessions today, and I'm delighted with this one. I think it's going to be absolutely fascinating. This is about how can patronage or developers or investors help create radical architecture. And it's this word radical, in a way, it's about how can they create architecture in a way. There's a point, isn't there, with architecture where it becomes a work of art as well, just a functional building. We've got a really great lineup for you to discuss that, both from an architect's point of view and a client point of view. We've got Yaris Paulus from Zaha Hadid's practice, who's going to talk about this crazy thing they did in Antwerp. We got Stefano Borori from Stefano Borori Architects, who's frankly a legend if you know his backstory. Not only was he once the editor of Domus, one of my favorite magazines, but has done so much for architecture, design and art, and sort of bring all those three disciplines together to create amazing projects. And then Laura Lee, who's one of the most inspired clients in Great Britain. She's in charge of Maggie's centres. So we're going to be talking to all of those, and what we're going to do is, first of all, Joris and Stefano are going to give brief presentations about the sort of radical work they're doing when they've had very supportive visionary patrons. Laura's then going to react to them a bit, and then we're going to get into a discussion which includes everybody in the room. So can we start off by giving everybody, our three panelists, a very warm round of applause, please? And then maybe keep it going as Joris makes his way to the stage. Joris Paus, thanks so much.
Boeri, perfect. Boeri, fantastic.
I apologize for my voice. I kind of lost my voice. Before talking to you in detail about the Antwerp project, I wanted to quickly run through various types of client relationships we have in the office. This is obviously the Vitra campus in Weil am Rhein. And at the top of the central axis, you'll see the little scribble that is Zaha's first building. And it's quite amazing that that becomes now part of what is a massive campus and a collection of contemporary architecture. A second group or type of projects, and I guess most of our projects are won through competitions. This is the Maxi Museum in Rome. I'm just going to flick through some. This might be less known. It's the Dongdaemun Design Plaza in Seoul, a combination of a park landscape, an archaeological museum, and a design center, which receives 30 million people since 2014, since the opening. So a hugely successful project. And obviously more known, the Aquatic Centre in London, 4,000 school children go swim there every week, 50 schools every month. And since the legacy period started of the Olympics, when the additional seating was removed, the volume became much smaller and also is much more sustainable in the sense that it uses a lot less energy at the moment. And then a third group of client relationships is repeat clients. This is a project, one of 4 projects for a developer in China called Soho China. We're building the 4th building at the moment, and in total this will equal to 1.4 million square meters of mostly office space. This is a second project, Wanjing. This is a bit specific because one of the towers led them to change their business model, going to short-term leases. They developed an app by which young upcoming practices could rent office space because of the flexibility that the towers generate. And so they, on a very quick basis, short-term leases is now their main business model. This is a project in Shanghai. Same concept, retail at the bottom, offices on top. And this project is the last one of the 4 and under construction currently in Beijing, with a 190-meter atrium which is publicly accessible as part of the project. The Antwerp Port House fits in the category of designs won through competition. The building is the headquarters for the Port of Antwerp. So it's an office building consisting of an existing building and a new extension, which together form the headquarter building for the Port Authority. It was opened in October last year. So how did we get one, how do we get to such a, what looks radical or looks strange, how do we get there to that concept? And two, how did we convince, or how do we get our client on board to sign up for this and to choose this as their design? Not very different from other buildings, I would say. In first instance, this is just by demonstrating the qualities of the scheme and of conveying the real advantages that these designs have in terms of the client brief. The client, the Port of Antwerp, is the 5th largest in the world, the 2nd biggest in Europe. And what they were looking for is a project or a headquarter building that really confirms their status as world port. Currently, or before this building, they were located in that building highlighted there, where various international delegations would come and they would ask, is this the Port of Antwerp? Obviously it's not. This is in red you see the size of the city of Antwerp. All the rest is the size of the Port of Antwerp. It's a ginormous undertaking. And so not only was it important for them to have a building that represents their status as world port, but equally for the citizens of Antwerp and in fact their employees, they rarely venture out to the port. They don't really have an understanding of what that is, that Port of Antwerp. And the building acts as a bridge between city and port, between employees and port, etc. Lastly, they also wanted to combine or group their various staff in one location, which were up to that date were just spread around town and in the port. So they decided, it took them 2 years to decide how to approach this, and they came up with designing and organizing better a design competition. It was an open competition, over 100 entries, of which 5 were eventually asked to develop a design proposal. They had found a fantastic location on the border between the city center and the port going up north, in line of this axis of the dock, and surrounded by water. On the site was this existing building, which was part of the brief was to keep the building and integrate it in the new design proposal. This is a copy of a 16th century building. It was actually built in the 1920s. So how do we approach that? In essence, the first step was to put a team together of specialists. In this case, local specialists. So that helps both to reassure the client that there is the local know-how of how to deal with authorities, how to deal with regulations, etc. And also, obviously, them being specialized in their field also reassures the client. The concept of the project is based on historic analysis of the site. Our specialized heritage consultants, they didn't analyze just the building, but also the urban fabric around it. And what they came up with is 3 main ideas that were taken on board for the design concept. One is the importance of the length of this dock, north-south between city and port, very important for that urban area. 2 is the fact that that existing building on the site had 4 equal facades. Which was unheard of really at the time. There's no prime facade, there's no main entrance. The 4 facades were equally important. And 3, the original design of the 16th century building had this fantastic spire on top. When the copy was built on site, the existing building, they chopped that off. They never realized that tower volume. So our proposal takes up these 3 ideas. We worked with an extension that follows that length, that north-south axis of the dock. We made that building, lifted it above the existing, the extension is lifted above the existing building to free up these 4 facades and to keep them equal, not blocking one of them by putting a volume next to it. And also obviously by lifting that volume up, you kind of recreate a contemporary version of the original spire idea that was part of the original design. So, of the 5 entries, ours was chosen as the winning scheme. These are some images of the competition stage, where you see the relationship with the dock, with the city center, and the port going off to your right better. And obviously, the international jury picking our scheme reassures the client to an extent. But what was even much more important, I think, for them, is that the 4 other competitors had similar kind of ideas. Everyone actually lifted the new extension above the existing building, or at least work with the vertical element in there. So that was a first indication for the client that the scheme that they had chosen or that the jury recommended was indeed not that fallacy of a crazy idea. Once you win the competition, then we have to work more closely. Everything changes, and you start to negotiate or to work closely with client or the management team of the project. Reorganizing the brief, going in detail, bringing in activity-based office. The previous talk was a lot about this. So how they wanted to work, they want to introduce new ways of working, etc. So it's working very closely with the client to make all that happen, integrating BREEAM targets, etc. The next stage is having the communication with heritage authorities. As I mentioned, we had specialist consultants because to me, heritage is a completely different ballgame. It's a different language. It's a different world. So we just gave our consultants almost the free hand to just advise us on what should be done, closely working with authorities and making sure that their main concerns were answered, that our main concerns were put forward. So it's a complete dialogue through the process. But I think for the client, coming back to the client always, it's important that they see that heritage authorities are also signing up to this weird, wacky scheme, and it also reassures that it's minimizing risk, etc. This goes as far as color schemes, materials, etc., that we're constantly in dialogue, decided how we deal with them. Same goes obviously for planning authorities, different conversations happening with can we bring green on the square, etc., can we lift things. Sometimes very harsh and hard words fall, and it's very hard discussions, but still there's a dialogue, and it's moving the project further, and people are signing up to it. And then obviously once contractors come on board, it's again a new ball game. For this project, the client wanted a general contractor in charge, and then two nominated subcontractors for both the steel structure and the facade. This because of the importance of these packages. I'll just run you through some of the construction shots and some of the interior images before I finish. This is the concrete works where they bring in the steel support for what is later on the extension. This is the extension in 6 modules being constructed in factory, being brought to site by boat, which added to our BREEAM targets, etc. Then being lifted in place by an enormous crane. The cladding going onto the building. It's going from a flat facade to a kind of cracked diamond facade. And then obviously the real test is the users, is how people use that building. I'll take you through some of the spaces we provided. This is the meeting room center on the top floor of the existing building. This is an in-between space between the new extension and the old building, an open air space which was not part of the original brief, but which we proposed to help with the geometry of the building. And for the client, they were very enthusiastic to take this on and to have this viewing platform halfway up the building. The restaurant areas, foyer spaces. Auditorium. Some of the meeting areas in the offices. Open plan offices everywhere to allow the activity-based office with different type of meeting zones being arranged, etc. And then what is important for us is that the client testimony to the success, or what we perceive as success for the building, is the fact that both the client and the city of Antwerp use the building in their advertising internationally and nationally to promote the city and the port, which is important for us to see. Thank you.
Okay, that's Joris Pols from Zaha Hadid. Amazing, isn't it? Looks like a dental implant to me. Extraordinary, in a good way. Okay, right, Stefano, you're up next. Stefano Boari from Stefano Boari Architects and many other things. Spent a lot of his life looking at architecture, art, town planning, and bringing the three together. His slides are not Brexit friendly, I don't think, but they're just being sorted out now. It's an amazing thing. Okay, so that's going to take a couple of seconds. So we're just going to pick up with Joris, if we may. Has anybody immediately got a question for Joris off the back of that presentation, by the way? Like, how did you get away with that? Oh, this lady here, yeah? Here it comes, galloping around the corner, beautifully elegant. Over you go.
Sorry, that was a long route. Debbie Hobson, Legal in General. I'm just quite intrigued. You said you've got BREEAM very good, which unfortunately in the UK is BREEAM pretty poor, not excellent or outstanding. Did the client have any sustainability criteria for the project?
On sustainability was a quite strange brief, if you like. It didn't come up at all in the competition stage. And when we were, I think, halfway through detailed design, somebody came up and said, actually, we'd like a BREEAM rating. So we sat down with the client, with our design team, and kind of figured out, okay, what can we do? How far can we go? What is realistic? And I think we maxed it out with saying, okay, we can achieve BREEAM very good if we really, there was extra investment, there was design changes, but if everyone chipped in, we could achieve BREEAM very good.
What I was amazed at in that presentation was that all the competing plans basically had the same idea, which was to elevate in a really aggressive way above the existing building, matching modernism with neoclassicism. Was that somehow in the brief, or was it just sort of just in the air?
Not at all. The client sincerely was expecting several schemes, boxes next to the existing building. They didn't have a clue that everyone would build on top or would seek. But I think part of the reasoning is also the fact that at the time of the competition, there were plans for a massive highway, elevated highway, just at the back of the building. So I think loads of people wanted to slightly be on top of that and having the view over that. That will probably led to the different combinations.
Yeah, but everybody went modernist. Nobody tried to mirror the neoclassical nature of that building.
No, not really, because the ones that came closest to it, what they did is they took the volume of the existing building and turned it upside down. So yeah, no.
Yeah.
No.
So
I think the contrast for us, it was interesting to, you've got this classical static, what's the word? Classical building that we wanted to, indeed for the contrast with the dynamics of this new volume that seems to hover in space or seems to have a kind of dynamism to it, and the static dignity of that existing, to not try and mix, or to be clear about the intention and about making these things complementary. It's not that one dominates the other. The extension couldn't survive without the existing building there. It's very much an end story.
Yeah, I can see that. But yes, it's, between the two of them, they are harmonious.
Yes.
Right. Stefano, is that not going well? Yeah, let's talk to Laura instead. It's like doing live telly. It's really fun. So Laura Lee is going to talk to us for a moment. Now, Laura, in my view, is one of the most visionary clients in Britain. She is in charge of Maggie's Centre, or centres as they are now. And Laura's going to just tell us a little bit what it's like being a visionary client and dealing with top-name architects, including Zaha Hadid Associates. Laura Lee, please give her a warm round of applause. She makes her way to the lectern.
Thank you, Will. I've been asked just to talk a little bit about being a client, and I just wanted to give you a kind of story from a personal story about myself. And I don't know if I would in any way end up being a sort of typical client, but at Maggie Centre we've gone on to build over 20 Maggie Centres here in the UK, and we've got 2 centres, one in Hong Kong and one in Tokyo. And Zaha has been one of our architects who've done our centres, along with Rem Koolhaas and Frank Gehry. So we've had the good luck to work with extraordinary architects. But I started my experience with Maggie's by knowing a woman called Maggie Keswick-Jenks, who cared very much about the role of environment. But at that time, I was a cancer nurse. And so Maggie died of her cancer as we hadn't yet started to build our building that was our first centre in Edinburgh. And I had no experience of what being a client means. And I think this is my kind of challenge within the community of building beautiful and amazing buildings, is we need to do more to help people be good clients. And I had the very good fortune to work with the first architect called Richard Murphy, who had had experience of being in hospital himself. He was a talented and up-and-coming architect in Edinburgh, and he sort of took myself under our wing. I also had the good fortune of Maggie's husband being Charles Jenks, who was an architectural critic and writer, and who knew a bit about architecture. But as a client, I have to work with a whole range of investors, if you like, and those investors are, in my case, the public, who gave Maggie's their money in order to help realise a Maggie Centre. So I have a role and responsibility to make sure that that money is being put to the purposes and that we had at Maggie's, which was to create an extraordinary centre and place that people could come to with cancer and be uplifted and help us deliver the cancer support and care that we needed. So in my sort of journey of going on and developing the Maggie Centres, I came across one of our architects called Piers Goff. And he taught me about not being a lazy client, getting an understanding of the brief, getting an understanding of the site, getting an understanding of the type of architect that one needed in order to respond to the brief and the site. He also helped understand about budget setting. When you're in the world of trying to be a good client, normally the client changes from the person who's got the vision, which was myself and Charles, to then being managed by the finance director. And often, if you hand on the baton of the client down the road, you lose the essence of what you started with. So at Maggie's, we learnt very on that I had to stay as a client throughout the process, right to the point when we got the keys from the door from the architect and to the choice of crockery and glasses and every single element of the building. Finance director plays a critical part, but I think the client needs to be sort of consistent. I also had the good fortune to go on and do a number of centres, but many people only get to be the client once. And I think that we need our architects to kind of help clients right from the outset about what it is to be a client, how to be a good client. Because one of the things that we wanted was our buildings not to just be a show statement, just to be a moment of ta-da, but to have a long-lasting legacy, to be a building that in 20 or 40 years from now is even better regarded, stands up well to the test of time and isn't just a moment in time. So as a client, we've got a really complex set of challenges. Both we've got to respond to our investors as well as trying to deliver on our brief. And the role of the client in the interface of the architect is an important one. But the architect is the only person that has had a number of clients, and they know what a good client looks like and what a bad client looks like. And I think they've got a role to help us be better clients. And I'd like to sort of take some Q&As from that in a bit. Thank you.
Stefano's continuing to see what's happened to his PowerPoint, so we can pick up the conversation there. And the obvious point, I suppose, Joris, is to ask from what Laura is saying, is other than having the finances, what does a good client look like, and what does a bad client look like?
I thought it was really interesting when you talk about the continuity on the client side, and I think that's crucial, not on the client side only, design team-wise, contractor-wise, continuity on a process that's going to last 5, 6, in our case, often 8 years, is absolutely crucial. And I think we often use the term who's the champion on the client side. And that doesn't mean that there's someone that pulls all the strings and absolutely wants to design. No, it just means that there is someone that can take decisions at some point that you know that you can really rely on to go to say, look, that's the situation. What do we do? What do you want us to do? How can we solve this? And that's absolutely vital. And often indeed when a competition is won, everyone's very happy and enthusiastic. Down the line, issues will come up. And at some point, you need that person to be able to take a decision and help the project on.
And Laura, why did you choose to make architecture such a key component of what you were trying to create, when you might think you would invest heavily in, I don't know, in medical infrastructure, in extraordinary facilities, in wonderful people? Why did you foreground architecture to such a great extent?
It's absolutely a question that we get asked a lot at Maggie's. Why put that investment into the building? And we could just spend money on a box. And I think what good architecture for us has done is actually saved us money. It's given us a place that when people come into, they immediately, and our job is helping communicate and relate to people. They feel at ease. They feel that they matter, that they feel that they're valued, that they can communicate with the building and see what's going on. And so the architecture actually has saved us money on terms of salary costs, has helped create a community environment, and has given us an antithesis to the NHS, where patients have come from, where they feel that they have been sitting under strip lights, where they've got no views of the outside, where they feel as the day goes on that they wither, that they are, rather than going to the hospital and feeling enhanced and better, but when they come into the Maggie Centre, the architecture and the environment immediately has a transformational effect on the human being. And it's very difficult as a client without the architect championing that experience, because people don't get it until they see it at the end. And that's why the journey from an idea, just like you showed at Antwerp, and the realization is a really fraught and hard-won one, because everyone's got a point of view. And so I think one of our experiences is about not designing by committee, by being very clear who the core client elements are and keeping them consistent through the process.
But Laura, how do you control the architect? So you get well, it's a proper question, because you get big brand name architects, and let's face it, one or two of them have got egos. I think that's fair to say, isn't it, Joris? Not you, obviously. And they might see Maggie's as an opportunity to do something career-defining, which kind of goes off-piste from what you actually want. How do you make sure that what your requirements are in line with what the architect is trying to deliver? And when it gets tough, not when it's easy.
Well, I think at Maggie's we have tried to pick an architect who his ego is well enough developed that they have got experience and know who they are, and they know who they are as an architect, so that when they come to take a Maggie's brief, they're really responding to the brief rather than creating a sort of show statement. And so, for example, I was on site yesterday. We're building a building at St Bartholomew's Hospital, which has been designed by New York-based architect Stephen Hall. And we picked Stephen because of his capability of doing something magical with light, because our site is very dark and grey, and it's a very tight space. And Stephen got the purposes of the building, but he also got the complexity of the site, and he knew how to handle that. And so he's responded to the brief rather than doing something for himself. We all have to work within the realities of our budget, but that budget doesn't have to be what a property developer says a budget is, because in our case, we want our buildings to live on into the future.
So what are you saying? You go far above the recommended budget?
Well, it's not just a quick profit. Our buildings have got to work hard over a long period of time, and so we've made the conscious decision of putting more of an investment in at the beginning to see that realised over a long period of time rather than throwing up something quick that in 10 years' time will look shabby and tired and will need a facelift. So we've also picked architects who can do something that will go on and serve people affected by cancer over the generations to come.
Joris, is that a typical viewpoint or an atypical viewpoint?
No, I think that is often a typical viewpoint. I think in case of the Maggie Center, there was a genuine respect from Zaha for what the Maggie Center is trying to do, and indeed there's no room. I mean, it's much more sincere, I dare say, than what it could be, and therefore it is indeed about opening up to landscape, bringing light in, making people feel at ease in these little environments that they are. But it's trying to answer the brief more than making a statement. Yeah.
Okay. Stefano, how are you doing? Shall we have a look? So, shall we give him a round of applause on the way there? He's worked hard at this. Thank you very much, Stefano.
The technical troubles. So I love to start with this kind of image because I think it's so important to know how much a tree can contribute to benefit the environmental condition. And also in terms of reducing of energy consumption, what a tree can do, it's really amazing. So that's more or less the basic concept of several of research that we started to do like 10 years ago about how to make a facade of a building capable to host real trees, not simple ornamental green or shrubs or brush or normal plants, but real trees with subjects which had their trajectory of life that had to grow significantly and so on. Basically, this started from this kind of study, and well, you probably know this is a BBC Planet Earth second series who was broadcasting the relation between the natural sphere and the urban sphere, and the exterior of this second series. The vertical forest is one of the example of a possible new way to combine these two spheres inside an urban real environment. Basically, that's some of the data that we are starting to check from the presence of the first two prototypes of vertical forest has been built in Milano. We have some trouble nowadays about the relation with nature, not only with green environment, but just because, as you know, cities are growing and extending their body everywhere, we are step by step reducing the space for the other species. And that's a serious problem who make us to think about biodiversity. But the inspiration of vertical forest for me was much richer. It came from literature. They came from architects and artists like Hundert Wasser, who was an amazing Austrian artist that in the 70s was claiming the necessity for trees to be considered as tenants. And then again, you probably know well what's happened in 1982 with Joseph Beuys in Castle Documenta, who was moving like 7,000 basalt stones and then transforming the basalt stone in oak trees. And they covering and transforming the city with 7 more oak trees everywhere, in the courtyard, in the square, in the boulevard, and was amazing. And that's my mother in the 60s. My mother was designing a house in a wood, where she was trying to respect the position of the roots of every tree, and for me what was extremely inspiring on me. But basically, the inspiration came from Dubai when I was teaching at GSD Harvard, and when my student I was in Dubai in 2007, and we were observing this crazy map of a city with more than 200 skyscrapers, all covered by glass panels, by glass. So I was starting to think glass is really the best material to cover a skyscraper also in condition of desert. And I started to imagine how to change and to propose something of really completely alternative. But the unique reference I found in history was this an amazing tower in Lucca, Torre Guigini, who was built in the 14th century, where the trees are on the top, on the roof of the thing. And that's the first image of the vertical forest. And we started to work with the idea to have real trees in the sky of quite a polluted and congested city, how Milano is. The construction was starting with Arup. Arup was very important for us as a bunch of botanists. We started basically in 2010. The real estate developer was an North American, very famous developer has Heinz, Jeremy Heinz, you know probably the name is. And when we start to show to Mr. Heinz our idea of constructing 2 towers with more than 20,000 plants, the reaction was extremely skeptical, and his answer, dear architect, thank you so much. I think it's crazy, but if you are in condition to answer to these 8, 9 questions, which are very technical questions about the cost, about the maintenance, well, we could think after 6 months to go ahead. Otherwise, bye-bye, thank you so much, it was crazy and happy to meet you. But we have worked so much in order to solve some problem. One was about irrigation, because I really wanted building work, absorbing the tree from the ground and then putting again the result of the irrigation of the trees. Then we did an amazing work in the selection of the trees, because in relation with the kind of humidity, in relation with the kind of sunlight exposure, in relation with the kind of windy condition, we had to select. And we have more 100 trees. We went in Florida, Miami, in the Gallery of Wind to check how a tree, a real balcony, a real pot, with copywriting decoration, which was in condition to resist to extreme windy condition, because imagine that at 100 to 120 meters, we cannot accept that a branch could fall down, and that was the result of the experiment we did in Miami, and was really very important, because was probably the most complicated point of our first attempt. And then, well, was about, we started to do a nursery in Milano, where we were following the growth of more than was by 1,000 trees, one by one. And then we moved one by one the trees from the nursery to the construction site. This happened, that's the last trees. And we are here in May 2014. So the last trees which are coming up on the 2 tower. And that's other images of this process. Was very delicate and at the same time very important. And that's an image of how is the vertical forest some months ago. We are in June 2016. So you imagine that it's equivalent of 2 hectares of a real forest, so 20,000 square meters of a forest, but in a space of 1,000 square meters. So I think also in terms of biodiversity, what is happening is quite important. It's really like an ecosystem. It's a host for every human, 2 trees, 8 shrub and brush, and 20 plants. It hosts more than 20 different species of birds, and that's another, let me say, interesting result of what we have done and what we can do. So as you probably know, we have been asked to also talk about maintenance. And maintenance is one of the most important points. The video is not starting, but okay. We had to, when we started to work with maintenance, we immediately understood that it was important to try to reduce the cost. So maintenance is totally centralized. There is like because we wanted the trees, the plants, the shrubs considered as a kind of common good for all the owners, for all the tenants. But at the same time, we were to promote a new way to do the maintenance. And this is a population of flying gardeners that twice a year, from outside, they came and they did maintenance of a real tree. This is happening also from inside. This is a book, because our idea was, let's make explicit and public all our efforts, because we really think that we need to have other architects, other engineers that all over the world try to improve what we have done. I think that's so important. So we have this book where you have everything. The book is also in Chinese, in Turkish, in English, and other language, and it will be soon also in. And that's other experiment. That's something that we are going to construct in southwest China. There is an amazing, this amazing natural park with more than 20,000 rock peaks with trees. And normally Chinese people was used to destroy one by one, extending their city. Finally, 2 years ago, they decided to stop, to create a natural park. They asked us to do an hotel at the entrance of the natural park. So what the idea was to let's try to compensate what they did, and the idea is to do an hotel which has the same shape of a hill. This is Lausanne, where we are in construction of a different kind of building with cedars. It's interesting because we have changed a little bit the technology and the relation between the trees, the food, the roots, the balconies, introducing also loggias, which is a very important point for this station. And This is in Nanjing, where we are in construction on 2 towers, which are more or less the same characteristic of the Milan's one, with a quite important number of trees. I've just finished saying that there is another step that we should do, and we have presented this in COP21 last year in Paris, this idea to how to understand how we can go back to something that was very important at the beginning of the 20th century, and basically in London, but not only London. So they have tend to find a new kind of relation between the natural sphere and the urban sphere. So with this kind of concepts and this more or less defined manifesto, we are now entering a different phase, trying to deal with main utopias and the main utopia about the future cities. And together with other friends like Jeremy Rifkin and other people, we are now starting to enter in this, let me say, amazing challenge, which is to design for a city composed by hundreds of buildings of different sizes with different functions, school, hospital, museum, not only residential offices, but all covered by plans. And so the idea was also to show how much this kind of new condition could help to reduce, for instance, the phenomenon of pollution in China, which I know so well is so important and so strategic for the future. Thank you so much for your attention.
That's great. Thank you, Stefano. Thank you very much. When I was leaning across to Stefano earlier, I said, well, do you really need your presentation? What a great, wasn't that fantastic? We thought window boxes were cool, Stefano. Who would like to ask our panel a question? Can you just put a few hands up so I can sort of get a sense of where the room is? I can't see the hand. Is there a hand at the back there? Thank you very much. Just at the back there, please. Oh, there we go. There's the microphone.
Paul Middleton, LLDC. Can I ask each of the panelists how the project has been managed in terms of the budget and the brief? Because in my experience as an architect and as a client advisor, that's always a big challenge, especially when we're using good design teams. So if I could ask from a client's point of view and a designer's point of view, the challenges of managing both the design from the point of view of the brief and from the budget.
Okay, Laura, let's start with you.
Yeah.
Budget and brief, how often do they stray?
They always stray, and they always need to come back into alignment. I think what's really important at the starting point is to let the architect know their budget, but also to give them the freedom to be creative. Because if you start by trying to control the design by budget right too early on, you don't get the vision and the possibility and the options. And then once you've got an idea of what the architect's vision for the site and response is, then to work out how to solve marrying the design and budget. And for that, I think you get a much more special building. If you go into control with a budget too soon, you kill the potential.
So Laura, do you start, is it like no budget to begin with?
No, our architects are absolutely given a budget per metre squared right at the beginning, and we can't go on site until we've met that budget.
And what is the budget normally?
I'm not telling you.
How to ask? Stefano,
it's generous.
Budget and brief. How often do you stray on both of those?
Well, it's very important. But this particular case of the vertical forest, you have to consider that probably the most expensive part of our work was what we had done before the construction. So what about research? I was showing you what we had done, trying to check if this prototype or this experiment could be successful also in a condition of extreme windy conditions. So just the fact that we are deciding at a certain moment to go to Miami and check that. So we have worked like 1 year, 6 months, 1 year, I think spending a lot in terms of money in order to receive all the answers what was needed by Heinz, by the client, who was very at the beginning, you know him, so it's very strong. And then, we have no problem. I think that the 2 towers in Milano cost was about 2,000 euro per square meter. And they have been totally sold out. Now they've been bought by the Qatar national funds,
Oh, have they? Okay.
and they are managing them quite well. And
did
the average of sold at the beginning was around 10,000 for square meter.
And did they come in on the budget you had anticipated at the beginning of the project?
Yeah, more or less, yes. Well, we had some let me say, margin of mistake for sure, but it was not about trees. So the point is not how much the tree costs. For sure, it's more about the irrigation system, for instance, because before finding, and we find in Israel, a company who was the unique, who really gave us guarantee about how to work with us and with ARP in order to establish a good connection about the maintenance of the irrigation.
This is a discussion about visionary architecture and visionary clients. I'm just interested in your particular project that, you obviously had a visionary client and you're a visionary architect, and what you showed us was terrific. But is there a possibility in future that, do you say the Qataris now own the towers? Is that right?
Sorry?
Did you say the Qataris now own the towers? Is it possible in the future somebody who owns those towers could just rip out all the trees, or are they specified within the aesthetics of the building?
No, I told you, I was just saying that I really hope that this combination of architecture and nature could be replicated in different parts of the world.
But is it possible that in 10 years' time those towers will have the trees removed? Or have you made it impossible for that to happen?
Why should they? So I think that the point is that trees are growing so well. The point is about maintenance. And for sure we have also considered the necessity or the opportunity to change trees, plants, shrubs. What I've shown you about the maintenance is also could be considered a way to intervene if you have some trouble. But I'm very honest, now trees are perfectly in health, and humans too. So.
Yes, very good. And Joris, now you. We've seen some of the reports over the years about some of Zaha's projects, off brief and over budget.
Sure.
I don't know how much of that's true. We're not going to discuss that now. But how do you deal with that situation when you do find the two things diverging and the relationship with the client or the project manager disintegrating?
Well, I think there is definitely a reputation of our buildings wildly expensive. I would like to come back to what Laura was saying. I think, for example, on the Antwerp project, it's run on a very tight but reasonably tight budget, and there's no excess in time over what we would have spent more on that project. What has happened, and that is really linked to what you're saying, is that there is an ongoing discussion with authorities, with client. Suddenly, the BREEAM, the previous question I had, the BREEAM target is something that came up halfway through design. Underground car parking in a water area is something that comes into design. So that just makes that's very conscious decisions by the client to say, okay, that is worth that investment extra on top of what the original budget was. But there's no, from a design point of view, I think what you're saying is very true. It's a continuous dialogue, and we can work to any budget. We're doing projects on all scales. There's no reason why we wouldn't want to work to a certain budget.
Okay. Would anybody like to ask a question in the audience? The gentleman over there on the left-hand side, and then I've got you, sir. Absolutely.
Hi. I wonder if there should be almost a school for kind of grooming brilliant clients like yourself. I think there's a massive need for more interesting clients. We are, unfortunately, a bit of museum island in Britain, which saddens my heart, but we produce some amazing architects from the Bartlett, the AA, the RCA, and obviously abroad as well. But I just think what a shame you drive out in Middle England and it's just miles and miles of rabbit hutch boxes which are so dull. Yet we need 1 million new homes, we need 12,000 new classrooms, we need to build lots of things. So isn't there a kind of requirement for perhaps training to get our clients a bit more with it? We are great inventors, and it's just a shame that Britain is, I think, pretty bland at the moment.
I couldn't agree more. I think some of the buildings we're seeing being put up are awful. Laura, are you ever sort of asked to advise? Has the government ever pulled you in? Has the National Health Service ever said, you know, how have you been so successful in using architecture to build Maggie's?
Yeah, not at that level. Usually it's a client who is having to do a dance school, and they know that they've got one chance to do something really extraordinary and well, and they're wanting some advice from me as a client. And I think that's the challenge, is often you're only going to be a client once in your life for quite a lot of our key community resources and facilities, and there isn't really anywhere natural to go apart from you know, the RIBA, and that's where I think the architect needs to help a client, and the client has got to be lucky in finding a really great architect to be on that journey with. But I think we need to train our clients.
It's clearly a problem. I'm going to come to you, Joris, on this one as well, because, you know, famously Zaha was frustrated that she got to build so few buildings in the country where she made her home, here in Britain. What is it about the Brits and our approach to planning and architecture that makes us so obviously conservative, unless it's some sort of statement building?
I'm not sure I'm the right person to answer the question.
You are, because you have the outside perspective.
I do think that obviously there's the market-driven factor, and over the last 10 years, I think we as a practice have definitely made huge steps to work with more commercial developers, to work on more commercial projects, and to find the balance between not just a bland new office building down the block, but to insert something that is of value and that can actually, you can convince people of the benefits of it and of the scheme and get developers on board to make that happen. So I think as a practice, we're trying to do that as well, but it needs to work both ways, obviously.
And is it going the other way too? Do you find that developers...
Yes, there is definitely more interest in the market. We are currently working on several schemes in London as well.
Stefano, you obviously work all around the world, as does Zaha Hadid. Where do you, if you were going to give advice to the British planning authorities, or whoever's in charge of deciding what the overall scheme and design of our cities should look like, where do we look to, and what are the questions we should be asking?
Well, but you know, normally we say that the architect is a mother and the client is a father.
Yeah.
And so I think that the way that we established from the beginning a relation with the client all over the world, doesn't mean where you are, if you're in England or in Europe or China or South America, it's absolutely, let me say, a crucial point, crucial issue. So, and from that point of view, I think that she's totally right. So the point is how you are not simply intervening like with a kind of problem-solving approach, but you have to help the client to redefine the needs and the question, the basic question. That's very important. If you don't do that, if you are only someone who came and has to solve the problems that were there before you arrived, your position role becomes really passive, or if you want, not in condition to really start a serious dialogue.
Yes, you can't do your best work.
I continue to think that it's very important how you start the dialogue with the client, how you are in condition to problematize also
so how you shape
brief.
the relationship.
And yeah, that's it.
Yeah, okay. The gentleman there.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm just wondering what importance the speakers give to engaging local communities in their projects, say beyond the planning committees and councillors and things like that. For instance, going to local schools, colleges, actually going into small neighbourhood communities, things like that.
Okay. Stefano, let's start with you. You're a big project, big ideas. Do you talk to the local community? Are they involved?
Yeah, we do. We do it. I think we have to do it. It's a very delicate point, because I trust in participation and the fact that the local community should be part of a decision. But well, you know so well that public policies normally they use word participation in a very, let me say, ambiguous way. So they normally are used to answer to, well, wait for very simple answer, which means yes or not. So they do, they propose, they find the solution, and then participation is simply, well, a bunch of people who say yes or say not. So if you want really to make the local committees and local community part of a decision, so how you can build the decision, that's really complicated and important and crucial. But well, it's a very long process. So for the vertical forest Milano, we had more than 100 meetings with local communities before starting the construction, and we received a lot of suggestions and critics, and also negative comments, because part of the local community was totally against this, was really skeptical and against. But finally, it was extremely fertile for us to receive this amount of information, suggestion, because finally that information. But honestly, then we were in condition to start to design by ourselves. And then we come back to the local community with our solution. At that moment, without many, so we had more or less sure of what we want to do. So that's finished.
Okay, now we have to finish, but we have to finish. But the panel will stay around for a second or two. They'll be here having their mics taken off, so do talk to them. I just want to ask Laura one very quick question on that, and briefly answer it, because we've got to wrap up. But the Maggie's obviously is serving the local community, but those who have been poorly, and the families of those who had cancer. But do you think beyond that to the broader local community, and think that the fact you've got this sort of statement architecture helps you build a conversation with the broader body?
Absolutely. The architecture creates a talking point for us about the fact that the place for cancer and where to come and get help is known through the building, and they don't succeed without a dialogue with the community. The community are the investors. They give the money, and they also give the support. And your local centre in Oxford, we're in a sort of kind of wildlife area, and they help us look after our garden and our views. But we equally have to have a relationship with the NHS and help them think about their environment and as well.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're done, I'm afraid. I think it's been you've been a lovely audience, I have to say, and a wonderful panel. Laura Lee, Stefano Buari, and Joris Pauls. Thank you very much.